Hello, friends. This is Nancy Juetten. I am the Get Known to Get Paid mentor and the host of the Learn More to Earn More YouTube show. And welcome to you today for an amazing call with someone that once you meet him, you're going to wonder what else he's got because he's so amazing. Every week, just about, I come live to bring to you an expert who has value to add to the Learn More, Earn More conversation. And if you are someone who wants to drive inbound client inquiries, sales, conversations, connections, cash, and all the other wonderful outcomes that can make you wildly successful, webinars, marketing with webinars is one of the most powerful vehicles through which you can accomplish all of those objectives. And today we have none other than the marketing with webinars guru, Tom Poland, here with us, the multiple best-selling author, to tell us all about marketing with webinars and why we need to make this our preferred marketing strategy. Welcome, Tom, to the show.
And happy birthday, Nancy.
Thank you. We should all be so lucky on their birthday to welcome such an esteemed guest such as yourself to our show.
Kind. You're too kind.
Well, I know you're really particular about to whom you give your attention. And so I'm deeply honored that you would allow time. I mean, where are you in? You're somewhere way across the pond, yes?
No, you are. I'm in Middle Earth. Well, I'm in Australia in a little place called Castaways Beach, which is sort of up the top somewhere.
Well, it's very nice to have you where you're coming to me from tomorrow, today.
Yeah. Last night was great. You're going to love it.
So you're a multiple best-selling author on lead generation. What's your origin story that led to that?
Well, funnily enough, it's probably the flip side of specializing lead generation today, and is that I couldn't do it. I mean, we were talking about 40 years ago when I had a management consultancy business, which I set up as a 23-year-old, which is a pretty stupid thing to do because people don't listen to 23-year-olds very much. But I quickly figured out I had mortgages. I had back in the day, you had to have a bricks and mortar office to have any credibility. So you had to hire a receptionist, sat at a typewriter and did nothing for the first few months. Business cards, letterheads, and so you had a lot of overheads. I had a lot of overheads both at home and started a family, and as I said, mortgages. And it was a wild ride. I mean, it was tough, and I quickly figured out I needed to have a system for getting leads in. I was dying on the vine, so to speak, and all these overheads going out every week and so on. So I bought books, went to seminars, went to workshops, flew around the world, sat at the feet of the great marketing masters, and every time I did a course or read a book or something, I'd go back and madly implement and found out that nothing actually made any difference. So I was stuck with going to business networking meetings and conferences and trade shows and kind of putting my hand up and saying, pick me, and I handing out a lot of business cards. And I really wasn't very satisfied with that. The big consultancy firms seemed to put something on a billboard and get clients in pretty regularly, and I needed a system. I figured out that the problem was that so many of the marketing systems that I was putting into place at the recommendations of some pretty good marketers were great if you were marketing a physical product. And essentially it says, boy, have we got a deal for you? Come into our shop or call this number and order this because you're going to get a discount or something. It was things like golf clubs, or it could have been dry cleaning, or so a car, real estate, whatever. Worked really well for that sort of thing. But what I figured out, and it took me far too long, is that what I was doing was actually more like proposing marriage than it was selling a washing machine, because someone was considering entering into a relationship with me, and sure, they had to know the benefit of what I did before they were interested, but after that they needed to check me out. So I needed a first date with folks. I needed to be able to identify suspects, if you like, people that might be interested, and I figured out that the event was the best way to do that. If I could get 80, 100, or 800, better still, suspects into a room, strap my stuff in a workshop or a seminar for a couple of hours, hand out the feedback forms, get people to tick a box saying, yes, I'd like to have a meeting and talk about working together. That worked incredibly well. And it was really the only thing that I found that gave me a return on investment. So when online meetings came along and I had sold that business and I was sitting around and my wife was getting sick of me hanging around, I discovered this thing in 2007 called webinars. And I thought, wow, I could maybe do what I used to do and run all over the place and hold these conferences and these seminars and these workshops. I could do that online, and that's what I did. So been doing it, launched in 2008. So that's 13 years ago, and never looked back. Now we have clients all around the world, and I'm teaching how to do the same thing.
Now, something I read in your book is that you're a little bit introverted. Is that true?
Yeah, it is. I don't get out, and I was always anti my natural instinct to go into a room and shake hands, and you know, and I mean, I like people, I really do, honestly, but I prefer them to be somewhere else. So my wife has, you find this a lot with couples. I think one's more social than the other. So I'm pretty content with my own companies, and yeah, no, it probably surprises some people because I think it's a bit like the stand-up comedian who gets depressed. When I'm on stage, I really come to life. When I'm being interviewed, I'm a bit more lively than normal. But then when the spotlight's off, I just go back into my own shell. Yeah,
I
and
think, I think that there's a couple of things I want to say about what you just said, which is um, the beauty of webinars is that your message can carry around the world, around the globe, to people that have never ever thought of meeting you. And yet you can be present for them wherever they are and deliver massive value on a schedule that feels really good to you. And then when you add in the idea about being introverted, if you can be on for 90 minutes and go take a nap or walk around the beach or walk your dog and rock it for 90 minutes as an introvert, that's incredibly empowering. And then the third thing I wanted to point out is that we have been in the middle of this worldwide scenario where people are not leaving their houses and have been forced to go virtual. How has that been a boon to the whole webinar thing?
Well, it has, and if you look at the cover of my book on marketing webinars, you'll see I talk about it's an auxiliary right down the bottom, very small print. People probably don't see it, but getting your clients 1 hour, but the efficient and effective auxiliary to marketing through seminars, etc. So, not suggesting it should replace. If someone gets an opportunity to speak on stage to an audience that are prospects, then that's probably the very best thing you can do in terms of marketing. But I think it's the go-to starting point because you can run webinars, including the marketing you need to do it for less than $200 a month. You've probably got most of the things you already need. If you've got a Zoom account, if you've got a webcam and PowerPoint, that's probably all you need. Internet connection, of course. And you can reach out. I think the last count, Mike, our business manager, counted 151 clients around the world. So that's a lot, 151 cities around the world we had clients in. And so you get that sort of scalability and you get this an incredible efficiency. So I had this direct mail marketing machine back in the day as a management consultant I was talking about before. We'd buy a list of people, or we'd rent a list of suspects. We'd send them a 10-page letter, which we carefully copyrighted, free tickets to an event, and we'd pack the room with people and so on. But that's very expensive. And there's a lot of moving parts. And if you have a dud, a thunderstorm starts up an hour before the event starts, or goodness knows what, then you've just burnt a lot of money because it's not just the event hire and the equipment hire and the staff and everyone else, but it's also the cost of marketing, which a lot of people don't factor in. So contrast that to a webinar. If you have a dud, well, maybe you've lost $200, an hour of your time. So it's extraordinarily efficient. And I'm not suggesting that it is better than physical events. There is almost nothing as good as physical events. But if you look at the effectiveness and you award points for efficiency, overall, webinars come out on top.
Absolutely. Something I remember from one of my former mentors, who's still a very dear friend, he said, one-on-one feels like a sales call. One-to-many feels like quality education. And so if you are an educator or a teacher or someone who has a method or approach to share, it's far less threatening for people to sign up for a webinar than it would be perhaps for them to ask for a one-on-one consultation.
Exactly. And the one-on-one is more like proposing marriage, and the group education thing you talked about is more like a date. There's, first date, there's some skin in the game. You're going out with someone and you're going to probably spend an evening with them, and unless it gets too weird. but the point is that you're not committed to anything other than maybe a dinner or a theater or something like that. So, and I learned when I started a software company when I was around 35, about the same time as a guy called Bill Gates started one, and he did a little better than me. But what we discovered very early on is that if you offered people a demonstration, they loved it. They were reluctant to set an appointment for you to show them your software. But if you positioned it as a demonstration, they'd sign up. They go, yeah, sure, come and show the team your software. Give us a demonstration. Kind of like if you're sitting, in a fashion show and there's the catwalk, and how much skin in the game you got? Well, it's probably an hour or two of your time, but that's about it. You get to sit back and watch other people work, essentially. So we position our webinars not as a training webinar, although that's quite valid. We position them as a demonstration. It's a demonstration. Come and see how my clients in whatever it is, 29 cities around the world are generating a weekly flow of high quality inbound new client inquiries in less than 1 hour a month using webinars. So, and the other thing about positioning your webinar as a demonstration is it's a very transparent and direct and honest value proposition. We're not dressing the webinar to be something that it's not, because we've all been to those icky ones where it's free masterclass or free training or whatever it happens to be. And it turns out that the first 20 minutes, there's a couple of ideas, and the next 40 minutes is a sort of pitch thing. So we want people to get what they think they're going to get. We want an alignment of expectation, because audiences should rightly ask, if there's anything duplicitous at the start of my relationship with Tom, will it get any better once I pay him money? And the answer is probably no. So let's be direct, transparent, and honest and open with people right at the start. This is not a free training session as such. It is a demonstration. Sure, you're going to learn a bunch of things, and I hope you're going to get great value. We want to practice karma marketing, where we give stuff away to people, make the world a better place. So that's our take on how you position a webinar: demonstration.
I love that. Now, since you were talking about first dates a few moments ago, you've got a philosophy that you've called Hugh Jackman Marketing.
Right.
And I'm wondering if you might tell that story, because I think it's worth a wink and I think it's worth talking about.
Right. So a couple of years back, it was probably 3 years ago, I was in the kitchen having coffee with my wife in the morning, and I, to this day, I still don't know what came into my head. It was some sort of brain sneeze. And I asked her, who do you think is the world's most irresistible man?
That's a tough question to ask your wife.
Pretty stupid question to ask your wife. And she mentioned a few names, but her eyes weren't really sparking. It was sort of Roger Federer, maybe, whoever. And then she said, oh, and her eyes lit up. She goes, oh, I know, Hugh Jackman. There's a guy who plays Wolverine, and he can sing, he can dance. He's pretty good looking. He's got hair, which is a big advantage over me, because as a male, you immediately get competitive. Like Hugh Jackman, oh, Hugh Jackman. But I mean, with Hugh Jackman, you can't do that because he's amazing. He can sing, he can dance, he can act. He's a philanthropist. He's community minded. He's an environmentalist. He's got his private Learjet. He's got homes on the Riviera. And I mean, how do you compete with that, right? And there's a body that Adonis would die for. So I said, oh, Hugh Jackman. Yeah. And I said, okay, well, and so here I was in my competitive mode. I said, what would you do if there's a knock at the front door right now and you put your coffee down? This is me asking my wife. And you went to the front door and you swung the door open. It was Hugh Jackman standing there. And he dropped to one knee and he held up a small red velvet box and he popped the top, and it was a $1 million diamond ring sparkling in the sunshine. And he proposed to you and he said to you, hi, you don't know me, but my name is Hugh Jackman. Would you make me the happiest man on earth? Would you run away with me right down? Don't pack a suitcase. I've got a chauffeur, limousines waiting, private jets waiting to whisk you away. Would you marry me? What would you say to Hugh Jackman if he proposed? If he's the world's most irresistible man, what would you say to him? So my wife puts her coffee down and she looks at me and she said, well, I love you, right? And that's the moment I knew that it was not going to be the answer I was looking for. And she said, well, I'm sorry, she said, I'd run away with the guy. I mean, it's Hugh Jackman. And I sort of was a little stunned, and then I thought about it, and I thought, well, I said, I don't think you need to apologize. She said, why is that? I just told you I'd run away with another man. I said, yeah, but I mean, if there's a knock at the front door right now, I have to be honest with you. And I went and opened it. It was Tom, and it was Hugh Jackman, and he proposed to me. I'd run away with the guy. I mean, I'm not even gay, but it's Hugh Jackman. And I tell that story because it illustrates a really important point, and I referred to it in a different way earlier in this discussion, which was that we're not the commercial equivalent of Hugh Jackman. We should not reasonably expect to go to a business networking meeting or a conference or a trade show and hand out our business cards and then say, should we talk about working together? Because that's Hugh Jackman marketing. And if Steve Jobs or someone like that had done it, people would probably say, yeah, that'd be great, Steve, But but we're not at that level. People don't know us, and they're going to need to get to know us, like I said before, that first date. So if maybe if someone knocked on your door and you weren't currently attached and they were good looking enough, and they said, can we have a first date? Maybe you would, but you wouldn't accept a marriage proposal from a total stranger. So why would people want to accept a proposal that we talk about working together from someone they don't know? So what I'm saying is we need to therefore create the equivalent of that first date. And the webinar does that. The webinar gives us enough time with the audience for us to establish what I call the 4 R's of psychological allure, which is the rapport, click, 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 I think I can get on with this person, the respect for your professional integrity and ability, the relatability, so the audience understands that you know where they're at and also where they want to get to. And finally, what I consider to be the most powerful marketing force on the planet which is reciprocity. Because if you do something of real value for someone else, they are unconsciously, almost magnetically drawn to the idea of working with you rather than someone else who hasn't done that cool thing for them. So the webinar in around about an hour gives you the opportunity to establish very deep relationship of, as I said, rapport, respect, relatability, and reciprocity with audience members. And as you said quite rightly before, you're asking audiences to put some skin in the game, but not too much at that point.
I love these 4 R's. And I also think that, while this may be jumping ahead, there's one thing to decide that you're going to make webinar marketing your priority. There's also a fair amount of skill involved in crafting a presentation that will deliver massive value and that will pivot properly to be in position to make an invitation to go a little bit deeper. I suspect that with all the work you've done with clients around the world, that there are some people that are rocking it out and doing it really well. And there's some people that are checking the boxes, but not running home to the cash. Are there some mistakes that you want to call out how do you want to handle that whole discussion?
Yeah. So the first thing is the title needs a lot of work of the webinar, because if you don't get the title wrong, it's people aren't going to be attracted to attend, and if they register, they're not going to be motivated to actually go and attend on the day. So so title is number one. There's no question about that. If the title
is, I call it lackluster instead of blockbuster, sleep instead of wake-up call.
Right, and there's 3 things you need to have in a title in order to get that cut through, to make it a blockbuster. And one is, the most important thing is it's got to be benefit rich. It's got to be about what the audience wants, not about what we do. So there's got to be an explicit, if not an implied, then an explicit benefit in the title. So how our clients in 29 cities around the world are generating weekly flow of high quality new bound in less than 1 hour a month. They're using webinars. There's a lot of, it's benefit rich. The second thing is it's got to be differentiated. Whatever anyone else is saying, or however else they're saying the thing, even if it's the same thing as what you do, you've got to make it different, because if it's not different, it doesn't get cut through. We all have, as humans, this thing called a reticular activating system in our brain. It's a real part of the brain, and it's designed to filter out things that are irrelevant and to make us aware of things that either have potential for profit, if you like, in this case, a commercial sense, or a problem. So if it's a dangerous thing, we take notice of it. If it's a highly desirable thing, we get to take notice of it. But if it's anything in between, that reticular activating system just camouflages it, so we don't have to spend undue attention on something that's not relevant. And you don't get through that if you use the same words that someone has seen 500 times before. So the classic is the business coach that says, grow your business and have more free time. So yeah, it's benefit rich, but it's not expressed in a way that's differentiated. If you said something like, how to let's say one of my clients is how to increase your profits and sales by 50% within 90 days, guaranteed. Now, this is a very specific niche. It's fast food restaurants, but and it involves software, very specific niche, but it's differentiated. And if we add and switch from working a 6-day week to a 4-day week, or have at least 12 weeks away with the holiday, with your family on holiday, something that's different. It's articulating something that's essentially the same value proposition, but it's expressed in a way that's how you get cut through. So benefit rich, It's got to be different. And you can often get to that differentiation by containing specifics.
Mm-hmm.
So I hope that helps.
That does help. And it makes me want to call out Jan Wallen, who's one of my clients, who is someone who helps people raise their fees without losing clients. Uh-huh. And we were talking today about what hook she could use in delivering value to her clients. And she was tuning into her CEO audience. And she said, if you speak in the language of your ideal audience, which tends to be CEOs, you find the words that are going to resonate with them. And when she figured out that she could say, I can accelerate your path to an abundant retirement by as much as 2 years as a result of this one technique, she started getting a lot more interest, because a lot of these responsibility-laden CEOs are looking at the possibility of being at the beach where you are walking their dog instead of carrying the heavy burden that they lead. So she was very specific: accelerate your path to an abundant retirement by as much as 2 years, starting right now. Like, she was excited.
Right. And the other thing that you've got going there is it invokes curiosity. I wonder what that is. I wonder if I already know about this. I'm very interested in retiring 2 years early. I think I'm going to go to that.
Right.
Yeah. Nice job.
Well, way to go, Jan. So one of the things that needs to get right is the title. And then there's a whole structure around how this demonstration needs to flow. So what are some mistakes that people make there?
Well, you hit the nail on the head before when you talked about how we want to add value, but we also want a commercial outcome. So that's the great trick, is how do you give a lot of value so people have warm feelings about your brand, because the vast majority aren't going to buy then. They're going to say subscribe, and you want to keep them with a good feeling about you and your brand, because the majority don't buy. So we want to add a lot of value to those folks, but we also, for the ones that are ready to buy, we want to be very clear about the value proposition, the action they need to take. The biggest mistake that almost everyone makes is when they go into the section of the webinar and shows the IP, the model, how it all works, what we do to get to retirement 2 years earlier, or what we do to set up webinars to generate their weekly flow of clients. The biggest mistake that presenters make is they make that too complicated. And it's an old adage, but you got to make it as simple so that a 12-year-old can understand it. Someone who has no knowledge of your industry, your specialty, is not even a prospect, maybe, if you can explain it to them so they understand it and they're 12 years old and they go, oh yeah, I see how that works, then you've got it about right. And no more than 3 parts or 3 steps in the explanation of your model or your IP, no more than 3. You'll lose 20% of your audience when you go to 4, you'll lose 60% of your audience when you go to 5, and so on. So you'll progressively lose more of the audience. And the way I sum it up is that the enemy of motivation is complication.
Okay, that's a mic drop moment. The enemy of, what did you call it?
The enemy of motivation is complication.
You heard it here first, people. That is a Tom Polandism. That is a tweet and repeater.
If you think of it like a wedge, a wedge has a small point. What would you call it? Height at the start of the wedge, and it thickens as it gets. So that's what we've got to do with information for prospects, is we give them a small amount at the start that's significant and adds value. And once with our model, people book a consult at the end of that. That's the call to action. It's not go buy this thing for $25,000, but it is book a consult and let's have a conversation about the way we should work together. And before the prospect books that consult, they know the fees that they're going to be charged, and they've agreed that they can afford the fees. They've also agreed that the timing is good for them to start. Otherwise, they're encouraged to book at another time. They've also checked a box to say they've attended the webinar, they understand how things work. And they've ticked a 4th box, this is prior to booking the consult, to say that they understand it's not going to be a free ideas session, but rather it's a discussion about whether we should be working together. But also it's not going to be some sort of sales ambush. So all the things that you get as objections during the normal consult, with people going, oh, it sounds great, but I'm not ready to start, or gee, it sounds great, but I can't afford it. All of those things are dealt with prior to you doing the consult. So these are highly qualified interviews. So that's the qualification setup. Now, what was I going to say before I got distracted on that? It doesn't matter. We'll keep moving forward.
Well, what I was going to say, having been someone who's delivered a fair amount of webinars myself, is that there's the certain recipe that you follow, and then
Right.
there's the being able to embody the content to the degree to which the audience doesn't feel like you're following some sort of recipe, but it feels very organic and natural and not hypey and of service.
Yeah.
And isn't it fair to say that you being a veteran of marketing with webinars, by now it just feels like talking to a friend. But if you could reverse time and go back to the first time you delivered a webinar, everyone, when they do something the first time, probably sucks at it.
That's quite right.
And then gets better and better and better as they go. So what do you say to people that have delivered webinars one or two times and objected to it or rejected it because it didn't work? And before they gave it the full boat of mastery that it required in order to become a cash machine for them.
Yeah. Most people give up on a thing far too easily. I think it's, I'd simply encourage them to persist. It's, people fall off bikes all the time and they start to learn to ride. You just decide you're going to play golf or go singing. It's not going to be pretty the first couple of times, right? So don't go just chase another squirrel. Get the squirrel you started chasing. In other words, in business and in life, it's the same. But in business, you figure out a strategy or a marketing medium in this case that makes sense. It just makes sense. And then you keep at it until you get it working well. And my philosophy is that if I can see other people doing something well and having a lot of success, and they've got a brain and I've got a brain, I may not be the brightest guy in the world, but I could probably figure out what they're doing and how they're doing and follow that recipe. I'm likely to get a similar result if I persist. What I was saying before, Nancy, before I got myself distracted, and you've reminded me, thank you, was that the wedge. So we give people a little information right at the start, and then they go and they book the consult, and they have those filters, those check boxes they have to click before they get access to your calendar. And then they get redirected to the sales page where the bulk of the information is. So you sequence the amount of information you give them. People on a webinar don't need, a 20-minute sales pitch on what it's like to work with you. That's for the people who book the consult. It's not for the mass group. So we're doing our education in a group. We're doing our qualification in a group. We're doing our motivation in a group to start with. And then those people who are seriously interested in book the consult, they get all the rest of the detail that they can read at their leisure prior to the consult.
I love that. Webinar, qualify, motivate. If they qualify, they get a consult. And once at the thank you page, perhaps and here's an invitation to look at more seriously before we get on the phone.
Yeah, we give them the link to book a chat with Tom.com. So we give them that link at the end of the webinar, having told them what the prices are, having told them, they're very clear at that point on how the whole thing works, because it's a demonstration of how we work with our clients. So it's the webinar. The call to action is book a consult, have a pretty link, book a chat with Tom.com, redirects on the page that goes to. That's where they get, say, if you're here, you're probably about to book a consult, please have a read of this, make sure we're on the same wavelength. Please check these boxes to confirm affordability, timeliness, etc. And once they check all the boxes, then they get access to the calendar, they book the call, and then the thank you page for booking the call redirects to the sales page.
So when you get to this part of the call, whether you're live or by replay, you're going to want to listen to this like 4 times, because there was so much value that just got dropped in terms of the sequence that people need to pursue, that you're going to want to just revisit that and make sure you dial that in and get it right, because that was pure gold. Now I want to address another question. You could have all this dialed in. You've got a wonderful title. You've got intoxicating teaching points. You've got a fabulous demonstration. You have a wonderful invitation. You're going to qualify people.
Wow.
That presupposes who the heck is listening and where are we going to find people to show up?
Yeah, otherwise it's like you've got this amazing neon sign billboard in the middle of the Sahara Desert. No one's seeing it, right?
Right.
Yeah, it's a great question. And the audience, if you've got an audience and nothing else, the thing is, if you got 1 million people on a webinar and you really mess it up, you're still going to get sales. And you have the best webinar in the world, as you said, the best systems in the world, follow up and check boxes and everything else, but you have no one attend, you're not going to get any sales. So the audience is really important. I'm not saying it's the whole thing, but it's really, really important. So the audiences, if you look at all the different ways you can get audiences, you can do Facebook advertising and funnels and get people to webinars. It's a really bad idea
Tell us more about that.
Well, the problem with that, so there are two things that make for a great attendee. One is their motivation in coming and the source of where they came from. And so it's not just about, people talk about, I'll get 1,000 leads a day with Facebook ads. They're not leads. They're people who, by and large, have absolutely zero interest in what I do. So we do Facebook ads and split tests, and we did it really well, I believe, for about 5 years. And when we started doing them, we could get webinar registrants for $1 a pop. So it was pretty cheap. Now that then they went up to around $12 a pop, and they're still going north of that. So first of all, people aren't on Facebook primarily to go and buy something. So the best thing is that you have an ad and it catches their eye, and they go, oh, that's interesting. I wasn't looking for that. So these are what I call the wanderers. That people are wandering through digital platforms and going, just entertaining themselves basically, which is fine. And they catch your ad, and so they go, oh yeah, why not register? Virtually zero skin in the game. They just got to give up an email address. So you're going to get around about 7 or 8% of those people actually attending your webinar. But it's cost you $12 for each webinar registrant. So each attendee is suddenly incredibly expensive. And at best, you're probably going to convert 5% of your attendees to the consult. And that's real. And people will tell you that they convert whatever they tell you, but I'd take some of those stats with a grain of salt probably. So the person, go back to the Californian gold rush, was it 1849, I think, somewhere around there? Who made most of the money out of the gold rush? It was the people selling the tools, right? The panhandles, the pickaxes, the tents, and everything else. The poor schmucks doing the digging, most of them went home broker than when they came. And so it's like that today with so many of these marketing platforms, including Facebook ads. I mean, Mark Zuckerberg's doing very well, thank you very much. The poor schmucks buying the ads, not so much. They're the people out there in the goldfields doing the digging, doing the hard work, setting all these funnels up and sitting back and thinking it's going to be an avalanche of high quality prospects. And it's not. It's fool's gold at best. So Facebook ads are expensive. They produce very, very poor quality webinar registrants. Most of them don't turn up, and most of them have no serious intent to buy anything whatsoever. But yet you have all these platforms saying, buy our platform, you can automate the whole thing. You can just go and sit on the beach with your laptop for half an hour a day, let all the money wash over your beautiful body. And it doesn't work. It's BS. So this Facebook, any form of advertising is essentially Hugh Jackman marketing. We're putting a proposition in front of someone before we've had, to get married before we've had that first date. So to cut to the chase though, what the best source of audiences is other people's networks, or OPN as I call it. And you might not notice a JV, but the way we do it is a little different, or joint venture, but so that's why I call it OPN, is because we do it slightly differently. So what my clients do is they run one webinar a month, and they have 4 partners promote that webinar. And most of my clients, and during the 4 weeks of the month, they're promoting their partners' webinars, or their partners' free book, or their partners' 5-day challenge, or whatever it happens to be. So it's reciprocity. No money needs to change hands. We eventually, you should probably want to set up an affiliate system, but you don't do that initially. So it's a cooperative, if you like, where I'm promoting your stuff, you're promoting my stuff. And there's a lot to this. Is the JV system, or OPN system, as I call it. There's a whole lot to that in itself, because there needs to be a debrief meeting, and there should be referrals coming, and so on. And what to do if I don't have an email list to get into that particular game. That's what we work with our clients, to get them an email list established fairly quickly so they can get into that game. So if you think about, if someone, so I'm in lead gen, but with webinars. So if someone else has an email list based around sales or marketing of some sort, then their email subscribers have opted in for a benefit, to learn about a benefit which is very close to the benefit I offer. And this is what I said before, that the reason someone is coming to the webinar is very important, and also the source of where they came from. Facebook ads being a very poor quality source, and often the reason it's not quite aligned with what we're offering on the webinar. So someone else who's got an email list that's offering free stuff on sales, on marketing, etc., is the perfect OPM partner for me. So we'll promote their stuff. They'll promote my webinar. They get an audience. They get more email subscribers to the list. We get more email subscribers to the list, which is our number one objective, not sales, because most people aren't ready to buy straight away, but they will buy. A lot of them will buy later. And so that's the best source of audiences. It's completely free of financial costs, which is really good price. It's completely sustainable because there are, if not hundreds, there's thousands of these people with email lists across North America and Great Britain and Australia and so on. And you can, it's high quality because the reason that they subscribe to the other list. So free, rinse and repeatable, sustainable, high quality. If there's a better source of audiences, I'm all ears.
Well, I couldn't agree with you more. And just yesterday, I was having a wonderful conversation with Melanie Benson, who's the Amplify Your Authority expert, and I'm the Get Known to Get Paid mentor. You can see just by definition, we have a lot in common. We solve very similar problems in our own inimitable way. And a lesser professional would say, I don't want to be on a call with someone who's so closely aligned with what it is that I do. But neither one of us took that approach, which is let's take an abundant approach because my audience is a really good match for what she does. Her audience is a really good match for what I do. And if I'm not their glass of tea, chances are Melanie could be the perfect solution and vice versa. So by taking a very abundant approach, we had a juicy, delicious conversation about what not to say to podcast hosts to have them running in the opposite direction and the degree to which your mindset can affect your big outcomes. And it was a fantastic conversation. But anyone who's ever said, I don't want to be in a call with somebody who's in my space is probably missing out on the biggest possible slice of the upside, right?
They are, and I fully respect their right to have that as a strategy. But you said it again quite well. I think there are people on my email list that will probably never buy from me, but they might buy from you. So let's get them onto your list, and maybe vice versa. So it's a cooperation, it's a collaboration. There's a whole science behind that. We have an algorithm for figuring out whether we want to work with someone or not. We have a selection process. A really important point through this whole thing is that my estimation, 97% of marketing efforts fail for two reasons. One of them is people practice Hugh Jackman marketing. They don't give prospects an opportunity to warm up and get to know them, establish a relationship prior to proposing that they talk about working together. That's the biggest mistake. But the other one, in addition to Hugh Jackman marketing, is that the person who's meant to initiate the marketing sequence doesn't want to do it. And this is so extraordinarily fundamental to the way us humans operate. We wake up in the morning and every day we do things we want to do. We want to clean our teeth, we want to go for a walk, we want to have breakfast, we want to breathe. We do every day we do things we want to do. Only on some days do we wake up and do things that we feel we should do. So if you look at that Psychology 101, let's align our objectives and the way we work with the way we're inclined to want to work. Because if we wake up and the things that we need to do in order to make our business successful are the things we want to do, we're going to do them regularly, day in, day out. And that means we're going to get really, really good at them. But if the things that we think we should do are the things we have to do, then we're going to do them at best and consistently and probably never master them. So to that end, if you break down the whole marketing webinar sequence, we have to find partners for a start. I don't want to do that. I don't want to Google and mine up and fill out spreadsheets and go to algorithms. So we have someone else do all that. So the whole marketing sequence is initiated, in our case, by someone in the Philippines who wants to get, when they wake up in the morning, they want to do the work for us. And it's only an hour a day. And it's part of the gig economy. They've got other people like me that they're doing work for as well. We pay them a really good bonus every month. And we pay them, for the Philippines, a very good hourly rate. So then we've got someone now who's initiating the whole process, who wants to do that. I'm a dog, metaphorically speaking. You know, I'm big picture, I bark. I shouldn't be trying to meow, but our wonderful Nancy and our wonderful Cecilia and our wonderful Olivia sitting in the Philippines, they're metaphorically speaking cats. They like spreadsheets. I mean, they start literally, I've heard Olivia giggle when she's looking at a 5-year cash flow spreadsheet. I said, what's going on there? Because she's so shy, she's never a webcam on. She says, oh, I just love this stuff.
So let me make sure I understand. You've got people elsewhere that are trying, they're evaluating what happens as a result of the webinars, or are they helping you to assemble the right partners so that you can have the right audiences to benefit from?
So they initiate them a whole marketing sequence. So the start of our marketing sequence, bear in mind we're getting audiences from other people's email lists. So the start of that sequence is, let's identify someone who's targeting the same target market as us. In other words, wants the same audience as us. Let's qualify them so that we know they're not a bullshit artist or, a scammer or whatever else.
Is this where your JV juice algorithm
that's the third step. The third step is we quantify them with our algorithm, what we call JV juice. And the quantification, so we've identified them, they're running webinars, they're targeting our same audiences. We've qualified them, integrity, etc., quality, and so on, so not a BS artist, etc. And then we quantify them, which is how many webinar registrants do we think that they would be able to generate if we did an OPN swap, a webinar swap. And if they get through those filters, then they're invited to meet, and I'm going to interview them for my podcast. Go back to Hugh Jackman Marketing. What effective marketing does is it gives someone an offer where we have a high level of confidence that they're already looking for that offer. So we know this person's marketing services, we know the quality, we know that they can generate a significant number of webinar registrants. Now the thing is, I've got to avoid Hugh Jackman marketing. I've got to be able to establish rapport, respect, relatability, and reciprocity with this person. What's the best way to do that? Get them onto a podcast as a guest. What are they looking for? Marketing opportunities. All we're doing is we're giving someone who we want to work with what they're already looking for, which is an opportunity to get their message out to our marketplace. So we do that whole process is initiated by someone sitting in the Philippines, a valued team member who's well looked after and well paid and we care about our people and so on. But the thing is, Nancy, they're waking up in the morning going, great, I get my hour to do for Tom today. And what our clients do is they just wake up on a Monday morning, they open the calendar and they see bookings coming in for the webinar they're going to run. And once they've run the webinar, they see bookings coming in for the consults. They don't initiate any of it. It's all inbound or it's done by someone else. So I have a lot of gaps in my week because we have a program, we have great instructors, et cetera, that's really helpful. But I also don't have to spend an inordinate amount of time in the marketing. As I said, as you mentioned before, I'm an introvert. So I just want to wake up in the morning, okay, I got a meeting to go to, great. It's going to be with a potential JV partner. It's going to be present a webinar. Dogs should bark and cats should meow.
Yes, indeed. Dogs should bark and cats should meow. In this last 47 minutes, you have unpacked so much value. You have done so much about creating the rapport, creating the relationship, creating the, all of that. Wow. And yet there's so much more to learn and do.
Right.
So I just would like everyone to know that this is just the tip of the iceberg. Today is your first date with Tom Poland. This is your opportunity to see how all of the help and none of the hype that he is, and to decide if he's someone from whom you would like to learn more from. Because what do you know? He's going to be delivering a demonstration on December 8th, where he's going to dive in and tell us even more about how to market with webinars. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what's coming up so that people can make it their priority to choose to make that choice?
Thanks, Nancy. So it's a live demonstration of everything I've just been talking about and more. I run a 90-minute webinar. We run them once a month. So there is a waiting list. If you can't get into this one, you can go on the waiting list for the next month. But it's bringing everything to life. So I go through the whole model, the audience system, what I call the asset system, which is a PowerPoint, how to put together, the call to action system, which is really important. So you end up with filtered, high quality consults. So yeah, and it's the opportunity to ask questions as well and unpack everything. So obviously we run it based on karma marketing. We want to give everything away. One of the questions I often get is, how much should I give away on the webinar? Well, give it all away, because the people who are smart and have the money will want to work with you. And the people who don't have the money need help. So give away as much as you possibly can. And the people who are arrogant enough, or I'm trying to soften that a little bit, who don't realize yet, they're not smart enough yet to know how dumb they are about webinars, you don't want to work with them yet. They're not quite ready. So we give it all away on the webinar. We answer questions directly, because the people who are smart enough and have the money will want to work with us anyway. So come along and see how we do it.
Well, and where you can go to do that, get your piece of paper out and write this down. https://getknown.com/Tom Poland. And I will put that in the show notes. And I will share that from the rooftops everywhere that I play in terms of social media, my newsletter, and everything else, because I am highly discriminating too. I bring only the best of the best to my show who have that all of the help, none of the hype approach to demonstrating their extreme credibility and track record, creating amazing results for others as they welcome good results for themselves. And Tom is all the way across the world. And somehow we were introduced and it was like, oh my goodness, where have you been hiding?
Yeah.
I think that if you want to bark more and meow less and you like to speak, right?
Yeah.
Scheduling a monthly webinar where you can deliver a demonstration of your awesomeness and invite people and qualify people to consult with you to see to what extent doing business makes sense for everybody is a systematic, smart approach to growing your business, doing more of what you like and less of what you hate. And I would be remiss if I did not say, being a podcast guest expert myself, the parallels between speaking up live on a webinar and the parallels of speaking live in an interview scenario where eons and eons of people are paying attention. It's very aligned. It just makes sense, you know?
Yeah.
So any parting thoughts you'd like to share with our audience before we wrap it up for today?
I think
I have one. I have a question.
Okay.
You know how sometimes people come to a program without any assets or any skills, and they emerge from a program completely transformed? I'm imagining that there are people that you have crossed paths with in your many years of success with webinar marketing, where that has been their scenario. What are the qualities of the people who succeed most readily making that transformation?
I think the biggest quality is humility. And that, you know, I mentioned before that some people aren't yet smart enough to know how dumb they are. And the people that I love working with are open-minded. It's a bit of a, there's two things they bring. First of all, they bring an open mind to say, I know you're doing this quite well, Tom, so I want to follow your recipe. But the other thing is they really back themselves and inject their beliefs and their ethics and their values and their personality, 100% dog, into my formula. So what we end up with is a result which is authentically them, but is also very, very effective. So I'd say, yeah, stay humble, keep an open mind, and know, be smart enough to know how dumb you are. But be prepared to also inject your personality and magnify that in every presentation you do, because you are your gift to the world. And you're here for a reason. You're unique for a reason. So let's amplify your voice.
That is beautiful. Well, I just want to thank you so much for investing your valuable time and sharing this brilliance with my audience. I promise that I will share it out as generously as I possibly can so that as many perfect candidates will join you for your demonstration coming up on the 8th. And one more final thing is that I want to just touch on no replays. Talk to me about that, because I'm sure people are going to say, oh, I've got Christmas shopping. Oh, I've got Hanukkah. Oh, I've got something else.
Right.
Why no replays?
Well, replay killed live webinars. You know, back in the day, back in 2008 when I started, if we did a replay, surprise, you couldn't make it, no problem, here's a replay link. Then we were getting 40% attendance rates, and whatever sales or inquiries we got on the webinar, we would get another 50% with the replay. So it was really worth doing. But what we did over many years is we educated people to not turn up, that they're going to get a replay link. So we went from a 41% average attendance rate down to, I think it was something like 9.5% over a period of about 3 years. And that's when I said, we ain't doing this anymore. Figured out why attendance, because people say, oh, people don't attend webinars anymore. Well, they don't if they think they're going to replay. So we have a no replay in caps and in bold. You know, there will be no replay. There's a waiting list if you can't make it. Because once we did the no replay thing, so as a consequence, our average attendance rate is back up to 31% from just slightly less than 10%. So since we adopted the no replay policy, so that's why we do it. And we know that it's hard enough capturing people's attention for an hour and 90 minutes when online, when they've got Facebook and they've got emails and everything else. try it with a replay where it's not even live. so replays killed things, and we do a thing called a wedge, which is not a video replay. We're explicit, there's no replay, turn up live, but then we have a 5-day value add follow-up campaign, which goes out to everyone who registered in case they didn't attend. And so we get literally 2 to 3 times the number of inquiries after the webinar than we get on the webinar. So we get our attendance rates high, and we get more inquiries afterwards. Best of both worlds. So no replays.
Thank you so much for explaining that. And I can only imagine that everybody who is listening now or on YouTube when this is posted indefinitely are going to be saying to themselves, I wonder if Tom Poland and his team can teach me how to do exactly what it is that he just described. And I imagine that that's what you're going to talk a little bit more about post demonstration in a couple of
weeks. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. So I call it laying down the train tracks. You know, the hardest part about getting a train from A to B has nothing to do with the train or the driver or the engine. It's laying down the train tracks. So and the train tracks is emblematic of a system that once you have in place, relentlessly delivers results month after month after month. So we work together with our clients to lay down the train tracks for marketing webinars.
Well, I'm sure there are a lot of future engineers that are thinking already that you are the guy that they want to learn from. So for the short term, what I want you to do is go to getknowngetpaid.com/Tom Poland, TOMPOLAND, and register for the demonstration. Show up. This is not Hugh Jackman Marketing. This is a demonstration to determine to what extent this method can be the way you bark instead of running, holding your breath and meowing instead.
Great summary. Thanks, Nancy.
You've been a fantastic guest. I'm so honored that we were introduced and that we've gotten the opportunity to deliver so much value today. This is Nancy Juetten with the Learn More to Earn More show. If you are not yet a subscriber to this YouTube channel, it's my birthday today. Won't you reward me with a red buttons push and a subscription? And if you've gotten value from today's call, post a comment live on YouTube so that we can be seen, heard, and celebrated for the contribution that we made for your success today. Tom, you are amazing. I can't wait to hear what more you have to say on the 8th. And for those of you who are going to be joining me live when I show up to benefit also, I look forward to seeing you there. Thanks so much. Bye-bye for now.
Hey.